Hello, everybody. Once again, my name is Shira Marks. I am on our customer strategy and thought leadership team here at GitHub, and I'm incredibly excited to be with you today to talk about really the ROI that GitHub can bring to your enterprise through some of our enterprise solutions, all the way from our core platform through advanced security, our CI/CD tooling, our instant dev environments, and a few other things. So the core of this talk is really going to be focused on the study that we commissioned from the Forrester Research, their Total Economic Impact Report. And to help us guide us through it today, we actually have both the author of the report, McKinney, as well as a customer and consultant who's going to really help us bring this vision to the real world by sharing some of his experiences. So, Clemens, do you want to start by introducing yourself?
Yeah, sure. So I'm Clemens Reijnen. I work for the business unit of Sogeti, which is part of Capgemini, and I'm the CTO for Cloud and DevOps. And I'm based in the Netherlands, Amsterdam. That's what I just put into the chat. Huh?
Amazing. And Jonathan?
Thank you for having me, Shira. I'm Jonathan McKinney. I'm a senior TEI consultant at Forrester, and I am based in New York. So it's morning where I am.
Awesome. And I should say I'm normally based in Chicago, but actually spending the month in the lovely city of Barcelona. So I'm, for once, actually on EMEA time as I do an EMEA webinar, which is quite unusual for me. So before we get into it, we do want to have a few disclosures that Jonathan is just going to walk us through so that we're really clear about what this study is and what this study is not.
Yeah, so again, we have to make the audience aware that this presentation is an abridged version of our full case study that was commissioned by GitHub and delivered by the Forrester Consulting Group. So GitHub's reviewed it, provide feedback to Forrester, but Forrester maintains editorial control over the whole study.
Yeah, and we like to be really clear about that. But we did all of this in good faith, and we're really excited about the outcomes. So for those of you who may be a little bit newer to GitHub or maybe really familiar with our open source community, that sort of community feeling of GitHub, but a little bit newer to the enterprise space within GitHub, we're going to spend 3, maybe 4 minutes just talking about what GitHub is, and then we'll get into really the goodies that Forrester report and the ROI piece. But if y'all just bear with me a little bit, I want to make sure we're all at the same place. So what is GitHub really for the enterprise? Well, we at GitHub believe that developer experience is core to every single thing that we do and every single thing that's going to help your companies be successful in the DevOps space and for your developers. So we focus on developer experience all the way throughout that software development lifecycle, from planning to developing to secure to automate and everything in between. And we do this all with a single integrated platform that empowers developers all the way through. So whether you envision your software development lifecycle as a continuous circle or a figure 8 or all of the different visuals that you can use, we are the platform that's going to help you go all the way through that cycle while staying in context, while collaborating together, while doing it quickly and efficiently in a way that your developers love. And we are the place where developers like to hang out. We are the home of the world's developers. In fact, our open source community hit over 100, our open source combined with our enterprise community, hit over 100 million developers a few weeks ago. I didn't even know there were 100 million developers, but we found them and we got them. And this number changes almost every month. We're used by the most innovative tech companies and cool startups and sort of big tech, as well as the leading global enterprises like Home Depot and P&G and Walmart. But we know that software doesn't start and end with your enterprise or with other enterprises. And we're also the home to the top open source communities and the largest DevOps ecosystems, because we believe that it all should be working together. And from an enterprise perspective, there are three main opportunities that we really think about, all supported by that amazing developer experience we're so focused on. So the first is improving operational efficiency, or improving efficiency and optimization within your organization, making sure you're shipping secure code the first time. You're not having to go back and fix problems once they're in production, or worse, deal with vulnerabilities that affect your customers. And of course, accelerating high quality software and development and delivery, which just means you're getting to market faster. But you're doing all of this in a way that your developers love, by giving them the tools that they're familiar with, that support them in their open source work, and really help them collaborate, stay in context, and inner source. So that's everything I'm going to say about GitHub at large. Now we're really going to get into the TEI report. And so just to give you a little bit of a roadmap of how the next 40 to 50 minutes are going to go, we're going to start with a little bit of an explanation on what is a Forrester total TEI, or total economic impact report. How did we, what is the process behind it? What are the things that go into it? And then we'll really bring in Clemens, and we'll have a discussion about what the findings we found are, and the main sources of ROI from bringing GitHub into your enterprise. Now, there are two things that I want to say before we get into this, and I might repeat these a few times. One is, if you want math, we got math. But we're not going to walk through all of the math of all of our different findings during this webinar. Instead, if you go ahead and download the official report, you'll be able to follow us through and say, okay, how did they get to this number? Is this legit? Is this real? You can either trust me that it is, or you can go back and read the report. The other thing I want to say is this report, the numbers that you're going to see here, are based on sort of a sample company. And you might say, Shira, this company does not describe my company. I'm way bigger. I'm way smaller. I have a different focus. We get it. We understand. There's actually an ROI calculator that is using the same math, but your variables, so your number of developers, your cost per developer, things like that you can access. It's really simple to use. It's about 6 questions, and then you can download your individualized findings. So just keep that in mind as we're going through this. These numbers might not be perfect for you, but we can get you those numbers in just a few clicks. So with that, I'm going to pass it over to Jonathan a little bit to walk us through, kind of, as the author, what is this total economic impact report, and what is it saying?
All right. Thank you, Shira. So the idea is that the TEI studies is that next level business case justification. So there's a number of different ways to measure IT investment and the effectiveness. And, historically, it's been total cost of ownership, ROI. And like Shira said, we're not going to go through the math, but those are basically, generic financial metrics. What the TEI study brings into that is risk. So it also measures how risky is an investment. Does it fit with your strategic impact? And we also take a look at quantified benefits. Those are the things that we were able to measure during our study, through interviews and different methods, but also those unquantified benefits. So those things that when you get GitHub software, they help, but you can't really put an exact number on it. So at the end of the day, the TEI framework identifies risk-adjusted benefits. So these are things where you save money, or you can increase leverage of other pieces of software. We talk about the costs, and then flexibility over a 3-year period. And the flexibility side is, I may buy GitHub for this specific purpose, but then I realize that, hey, you know what? I could also use it over here for this purpose or that purpose. So we try to have a holistic view of the software environment and how it interacts. And those are the things that feed into our TEI study. So again, like Shira said, we don't want to pick a specific industry or a specific company to focus on. So we interviewed 4 customers that GitHub provided us. One, excuse me, one was a supply chain management company, one was automotive manufacturing, one was telecom, and one was professional services. So we tried to have a broad spectrum of users with different use cases for software development. And then based on those 4 customers, we merged them and pretty much averaged the usage. So we decided it was going to be a global operations because they were all had global footprints, centralized data center. They were using enterprise in the cloud with advanced security. And we decided on 7,000 users, which was about the average between the two. And that was in the beginning, in year 1, and added 500 GitHub users every year for the next 2 years. So for a total of 3 years.
And I want to jump in,
go ahead.
Just jump in really quickly. This number right here, that 7,000 users in year 1, adding 500 users per year 2, if that doesn't sound right to you, that's where that ROI calculator is going to come in. So exactly. That's the point where you're going to be like, wait, maybe not me, but we got your back.
Yes, exactly. And that's the beauty of this is because we've made it generic, you should be able to plug your numbers in and see similar results that you can relate to. 20,000 code repositories. So, lots of repositories. And, there are lots of features with GitHub, but we focused on, code spaces, actions, depend upon, discussions. We also had one of the 4 that was testing Copilot. And when we started the TEI study, that wasn't in production. So we can't use it for the quantified benefits, but we've talked about it as an unquantified benefit within the study, just to acknowledge that it was coming. So the project approach started with our due diligence. So we had stakeholder meetings with GitHub, with marketing and different groups, and decided what is the focus that they wanted. What are the tools, and what is the direction they're going. And then they gave us the interviews. And this was a little different with this study, is we also had a survey of 147 customers that we were able to add to our knowledge base. So we had a number of questions, how they use it, all the generic demographic, where are you located. But then we got into, what is the software that you're currently using? How did you replace it? Or how did you work with GitHub? And all of that information fed into our composite model that we got those numbers from, the 7,000 users and so on. That fed into our financial model. So we had all these different numbers, and this is, it will mirror the calculator. So you will be able to do the same things that I did with the financial model. Plug in your numbers, it'll produce some results. And then we wrote the case study. So we added the narrative to the findings. And finally, it went through a rigorous review process within Forrester. So my financial model went to other consultants who verified the numbers, and then the narrative was passed through a number of different phases. It was also passed back to GitHub so they can review it. Like I said in the disclaimer, they were able to review it. They weren't able to change it, but they were able to see what we were doing. And then finally, we delivered the result that you can click on and review today. So the idea is that if you bought GitHub, this is the 3-year impact. So our first, finding, return on investment was 433%. So, extraordinary results. $168 million in benefits, net present value of $136 million, and a payback of 6 months. So after 6 months, you're in the black.
Which is Really incredible. Now, before we get into sort of the 7 more like deeper dive findings, I'm actually going to stop sharing my screen for just a minute, and I'm going to invite Clemens to tell us a little bit about, your lived experience from GitHub, both as a customer and as a consultant in the space. And just share what was your experience like with GitHub, and then we'll get into some of those extra levels of
practices and details. And,
yes.
and that's what I read the report back to back, and it's very interesting, not only from the numbers perspective, but also from the practices and what people are using and how they see benefits from it. So let me briefly explain the before, what I often see when I enter customer situations, and what their requests and what their challenges are. So often when a customer wants to go to cloud native or wants to modernize their application landscape, they're also going to assess and look what are the DevOps tools, what is the DevOps platform, what helps our teams to deliver that software to production. And when I look at those kinds of landscapes of all kinds of DevOps tools, there are a lot. Definitely when DevOps teams are fully independent, they can move forward and do everything what they want. I've seen situations where a customer had actually, I think every testing framework which is out there on the globe, they have adopted, because every team wants to have their own testing framework, their own security practices and everything. So what I see happening, it is there's a strong urge for consolidating and starting to use one platform. Don't maintain the platform yourself, and then moving it straight to the cloud. And actually, that's where GitHub Enterprise with Advanced Security jumps in, actually, because it is just one single platform. You need to train people on it, but then it starts to use. And then that's definitely what I read about in the whole report. It's just so recognizable. I see that with many customers. I see it in our own situation. Definitely when they want to move from on-prem to cloud, those are the scenarios where I see GitHub starts to flourish there.
Yeah, and it's interesting because not only, you made the point of once you train on it, you're ready to go. GitHub is so prevalent within the hobbyist community and the student community that actually most of your people are even already going to know how to use it, going to know the basics. So you kind of, in many ways, can skip that step. And we'll see that in a little bit later on. All right, I'm going to go back and start sharing my screen again. Thanks for that sort of brief dive into the real world. Play from current slide. And now we're really just going to go through what are the specific challenges that we saw in the composite companies that we interviewed in surveys, and then the results. So Jonathan, if you want to just take us away on this last slide.
Right. Thanks, Shira. So the idea that, the number one challenge was quality should be no surprise to everybody out there. It's just, that's the problem. You're under pressure to deliver secure software quickly to market with no bugs. And so under that kind of pressure, especially when you're not centralized, like Clemens was mentioning, you end up with this friction between groups and so on. So large organizations tend to develop in silos, each with their own distinct way of doing things, and lack of visibility between these silos leads to the frequent quality issues. The second was securing code, which is that natural outbound problem that, if I send out code that can be hacked, not only does it put that organization in jeopardy, but all their vendors. So security is becoming a huge challenge, especially with open software. So the idea is that prior to GitHub, people were finding that security was often an afterthought. So let's build the software, then let's figure out how to make it secure. So what we discovered is that the the ability to shift left to get the security in the beginning was very important to these interviewees. Along with that was automation. So again, when you have people that are manually doing things, everybody's going to do it slightly different. If I can get one way to do it and use automation to enforce that, then I know that I have standardization across my enterprise. And that, before GitHub, that was a big challenge. The fourth one was ramping up new projects. Again, that goes back to the beginning of trying to get projects out the door quickly. So I need things, I can push a button and I have things ready. I don't have to spend a lot of time building code or, relying on the individual to decide what should be in a project and what shouldn't be. And so that was one of the big challenges, especially with the problem of having getting developers. There's a short market right now. So getting, junior developers who often want to reinvent the wheel to standardize was a problem. So, ramping up projects was that last big challenge.
Yeah, and these last two are really, they're really about DevOps maturity overall. In some internal research we've done outside of the Forrester report, we've seen that there is, a general trend towards going to, rapidly opening up new projects and then deploying quickly through automating tasks. But there really is a large segment of the sort of developer and enterprise population out there that's still doing these monthly or even quarterly instead of that weekly or daily that we want to be seeing.
You look at me then, Shira. Yes, that's definitely the case. The first moment GitHub Actions came out, extending actually the automation capabilities, not only for the CI/CD part, but actually to automate a lot of activities what a DevOps team normally does. That's where I saw actually this has a great potential, and it is now heavily used to indeed standardize across the whole organization how people are deploying stuff, how people are acting around their DevOps practices. So that standardization drive is really important, definitely within enterprises. I just wrote together with a colleague an article about one pipeline to rule them all. Because now you can set even required actions to execute on repos at organizational level. It is so cool for security and compliance that they can just say, okay, this pipeline needs to run in every repo, because that gives us immediately insights around all those items, what I want to know about these kinds of repos. So automation actions, it's really important. Yes.
Yeah. All right, let's get into those benefits. The reason that we are all here, you guys have been so patient with us leading up to this, but now we're getting into the goodies right now. So you're going to see 7 benefits that are quantifiable over the next couple slides. So just wanted to give you a quick preview there, but we're going to kind of go through them one by one and really unpack them. Yep. Jonathan, you want to kick us off?
Sure. So the first benefit, increased developer productivity. Number one, by far the most important benefit that people were seeing. So you think about, how I develop, when I have problems that I have to track down, that just grinds on productivity. So having, the GitHub Enterprise and Advanced Security in place, they were able to, number one, automate many of the manual processes, enforce them with event-driven workflows, and they were able to discover security flaws much earlier in the process. Again, that whole shift to the left. And so the idea was that we don't have to spend that time tracking down problems, all that wasted energy. We can focus on being inventive, to being productive, writing code rather than fixing code.
Shira, just a small interruption. Are you sharing your screen? We don't see it right now.
Oh,
I see some people complaining in the chat.
I was sharing my screen, but I'm going to turn it off and then turn it back on again so that we can make sure that people are seeing it. I had it shown, but I'm going to see what's going on here.
Okay. Sorry for the
apologize. No, if people can't see this, let me just see what exactly we have going on here, because I don't want to see that. Wait, now it seems to be sleeping in and out. All right. Not that. The follies of modern IT systems, guys. We try to be better than Zoom, and sometimes we really shouldn't. All right, we're trying this one more time. All right.
So while we're waiting, I actually have a quote. Dependabot opens an issue, for example, dependency bugs. Earlier, it was infinite wait time for bugs to be addressed. So I don't know, Clemens, if this is something that you experience, but, waiting for, all the different people that are in the development chain to address a problem versus, the automation and the scanning.
Yeah. So Jonathan, what you recognize is people switching on all kinds of security tools. All kinds of vulnerabilities are found in production. All kinds of reports are done. The security officers are looking at the nice dashboards, but no action is taken on it, actually.
Right.
So going from a vulnerability, what is found, to a action which is popping up in the developer space, that's when you are using those different tools, that separates it a little bit. And that's what I definitely like, for example, how Dependabot automated this. Dependabot, you immediately get a pull request. So it is quite easy as a developer to take action on it. It's a push. I'm trying to do it with every DevOps team, with every customer, a request. How fast from the moment that you find it, that the developer takes an action on it? How easy is that, and how fast can you go there? It's definitely a big challenge within enterprises.
Yeah, and the mean time to remediation, that's a big metric that's standard across all organizations. The other thing I didn't mention was from the DevOps and the DevSecOps, how that makes them more productive, because I can write code once and distribute it across the whole organization, rather than I have all these silos and I have to identify issues in each silo and write custom code for each silo. The DevOps and DevSecOps teams, where you have actions, workflows, and automated performance scans, and embed these workflows in code spaces. So when new projects are created, all of this stuff is already there. They don't have to think about it.
And Jonathan, just to reflect on that one, we are as a global organization where everybody works in different teams, in different customers, different situations. Knowledge sharing is so important for us.
Yes.
We are a very big fan and adoption of inner source.
Yep.
Now, our developers are already coming from out of school with GitHub as a knowledge. They worked a lot of open source. So it's not a very hard training there to get those developers. Okay, this is our knowledge base. Let's work all together here. They are used to do that within GitHub. That's quite an interesting benefit there from the code sharing perspective.
Yeah, and one thing that I'll just call out, you may have heard in the last minute or two, things like code spaces and actions and advanced security and projects mentioned. For those of you who may be a little bit less familiar with the nuances of GitHub, those are just all different elements of our platform. Some are SKUs, some are features and functions. But what you really get out of the conversation that they just had, even if you don't know exactly what they do, is that this developer productivity is embedded throughout the whole platform. So we're so focused on developer experience, and developer productivity is a key part of that. So everything we do is sort of like, and how is this making your developers more and how is that making your developers more productive?
Yeah. And you can see, $146 million is an amazing number just from these little tweaks, just, standardizing code, automation, and all that. That second bullet, the reduced need to support local legacy and open source, think about, how an organization grows, organically, you may have, multiple departments that grow with their own processes. One of the things we did find was one of the 4 organizations we interviewed actually grew by acquisition. So now we have totally foreign development methodologies that we have to incorporate into our processes and manage. So what they found was they had lots of different tool sets that they had to do something with, so that reduced need for local support. Basically, GitHub was able to absorb those tasks and centralize them. So that was that middle bullet.
Yeah, Jonathan, and this was actually my example from the very first question I got. Organizations have so many DevOps tools on-prem. They want to modernize their application landscape, and they immediately also look, okay, how can we get benefits of moving all those DevOps tools into one consolidated platform in the cloud? We are helping a lot of customers with that scenario, actually, and that's standardized practices, standardized on automation, just to gain that benefits there. And in my point of view, the numbers should be much higher, but
we like to be honest here. And conservative.
Yeah. And then that last bullet, the efficiencies from fewer defects, I'm going to lead with a quote. So previously, it took 2 developers on average a week or 80 hours to address an issue. Now it takes them 6 hours. So that's a big drop, very significant improvement. So that's, in a nutshell, describes how these efficiencies from fewer code defects make the developers more productive. They don't have to chase bugs down, like Clemens was saying. You have Dependabot, you will suggest things that are wrong. There's lots of different ways that you can be more efficient. And in the study, we detail a lot of that. But yeah, in a nutshell, GitHub allows you to focus on coding rather than remediating.
And what's so interesting there is okay, 80 hours to 6 hours. That's really, you're saving a lot of money just in terms of developer time and developer salary. But when we come to vulnerabilities, that's the 80 hours is not the problem, right? The 80 work hours is not the problem. It's the week that you have a vulnerability in your code. And what might that mean to your customer, right? Or to your customers and to your business, right? If that ends up being a bigger problem than a small code defect, right? You might have millions and millions of dollars at stake, or a huge problem for your company. So yes, we have the 6 hours to 80 hours, but what that really means is 1 day to 1 week of a vulnerability.
Right. Yeah, and what you see also happening there is we have the idea is you need to start secure. So when you are picking the packages, the dependencies you are going to rely on, you want to know they are secure by default. We are doing that just like Dependabot for infrastructure as code. It's validated, everything is compliant. So teams can grab it from there, knowing that what they are starting to use is compliant and is secure. And then later on, with all the automation with GitHub Actions, they know that they stay secure. And that brings a lot of comfortable feeling by developers, so that they can focus on the business functionality continuously. So definitely good one.
Yep. All right. So this next one, this was surprising to me. Reduced developer onboarding training was huge. I mean, the idea that Shira, like you said, most of these kids have used GitHub in college, and so they come in with a base knowledge. But the idea that when I walk in and you sit me down, I don't have to train you on how to write secure code. here's a package that already has security built in. Just start your project from here. Your code goes here. All this other administrative stuff that wraps around your code to make it secure and efficient, that's built in by senior developers. So, onboarding training was reduced a lot.
And Jonathan, what you also see here is with code spaces, for example, developers, or the senior developers, as you call them, are building those images, which are the secure developer environment for the developers. Interesting that though, last May we released a report together with Microsoft and GitHub about securing enterprise DevOps environments. It sounds a little bit long title. We are saying actually as a subtitles, hackers are shifting left too. So how to take care that the developer environment is already secure. And CodeSpace is a very good example there, because you get a new version immediately every time over and over again. And then we also explain how to secure your DevOps platform and how you can set all the tweaks around it within the GitHub platform, that when a developer starts fresh, that they know that it is the secure environment that they are working from. And that helps teams definitely be much more efficient. And with all the APIs around GitHub, you can hack around and do everything actually what you want to bring that automation to your teams and having them a very secure environment there.
And I believe our colleague Jonya should have put a link, or will be putting a link to that case study in the chat. I've read it over the past several days, and it is juicy. It is filled with just case studies and best practices, both, on GitHub and also just general practices. It's really, really a great read. So would recommend that.
Thank you.
Yeah. And actually, just before we leave this first bullet, look at the quote. Junior developers were productive within a week versus them taking a month. So you think about a junior developer who doesn't know what they're doing on the loose for a full month before they know what they're doing. How many vulnerabilities were released? So again, reducing the developer onboarding training time is reducing your exposure to issues.
Yeah, the other way I really like to think about this one is there is onboarding to a new company, and then there's onboarding to a new project in a company that you've maybe worked for 5 years, right? Maybe you have a special skill, or you wrote some code and have some expertise that another project wants to take advantage of. Well, instead of having to go configure your laptop and make sure everything works, you can come in. Maybe you are already a senior developer. You can come in, open that instant workplace, that code space, help out, do your thing, join that project. Maybe 3 hours later, you're going back to your day job, but you were able to do that sort of quote unquote onboarding to a new project, not just, okay, well, we're not hiring anybody right now. This is anytime someone wants to help their buddy on another team.
Yeah. And we are using CodeSpace, for example, also for our consultants who are often doing support for multiple different kinds of projects. They just can grab the machine at the moment they need it, and they start working from it. I'm really a big fan of CodeSpace.
It's a great example.
Yeah. Now the improved DevOps, again, this goes back to a small team that has to manage standardization across a large organization. So all the things we just mentioned with code spaces, dependent bot workflows, and things like that. You force multiply the reach of these DevOps and DevSecOps teams so they can be more efficient in managing and tracking code, write code once and share it thousands of times. So huge benefit. I don't know if you want anything to add about your DevOps teams, DevSecOps, Clemens?
Oh, yeah. Yes. So I already, I was looking at the question in the chat around infrastructure as code is mandatory. And it's definitely, that's what I was looking at. Just back to the DevSecOps story. we already had the example that the disconnecting part of what I see happening with teams there. But when you are using GitHub with the right environments in there, with the right approval workflows in there, in your GitHub workflows, definitely that interaction, that integration is starting to flourish, and that people are really starting to work together and become more efficient around all those kinds of aspects. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Well, and that leads into the third bullet, retiring these outliers, these different software servers. In our model, what we said is that, say there was a team of 10, one of the 10 has to be the owner of that third party security tool. They had to back it up. They had to make sure it's up and running. And if something happened, the team was dependent on that one person to react. So 4 o'clock in the morning, if something goes down, builds blow up, they have to get that person out of bed. So there was a lot of issues with these legacy systems.
And then definitely also on the build servers were just one system, but then you have the build agents.
Yeah.
The machines would compile and needs to be updated and have the right version of it. It is a hell to maintain them.
Yeah.
And that's definitely what I always push to teams: use the default. Don't want to run your own builds. Don't want to maintain your own build agents. In some situation, it is mandatory. You can't do it without it. But try to stay with the default ones as much as possible. It saves you so much time in maintaining machines, actually. Something you don't want to do nowadays anymore.
Right. And this is really one of the first big unquantified benefits. So you think about the morale. All these people maintaining these systems. I can't go get a cup of coffee. I have to sit here and watch my monitor and make sure the build finishes. So again, we couldn't measure this in our study, but all 4 of our interviewees mentioned this, that, it raised morale.
Yeah.
And there's sort of the retiring legacy development tools piece, which is really what we showcase in the study. But there's also just a general tool consolidation piece as well, because GitHub touches so many different aspects of that software development lifecycle. It's not sort of a one-trick tool. You're going to be able to do a consolidation, even if you aren't using legacy tools. Even if you're using modern tools, you might be using a lot of tools that are all over the place. So it kind of has that extra layer on top of it as well.
Yep. And the last one was a surprise, actually. The one consulting firm that we interviewed said that GitHub saved them time preparing for audits. So the reason is all of the self-documenting that happens with GitHub. They actually had a team of, and I'm drawing a blank on how many, but a significant amount of IT professionals, not necessarily coders, but that would have to go out, prepare the audit, mostly maybe accountants, people who understood the numbers, but they would have to go in and look at the code and make sure that it was compliant with Sarbanes-Oxley and whatever other measures that they had to meet. And they could just go into GitHub and pull up all the documentation, save them hours. I mean, at the end of the day, you can see that number, $2.6 million saved. And a lot of that was just labor, people running around gathering.
And I'm not sure if we answered this question like that, but this is definitely a pain point when, for example, you are starting with your hundreds of DevOps teams. So I have customers with more than 500 DevOps teams. It is crazy. They all started to create services and they all want to do it on their own way. How do you prove that your system is compliant, conform regulator requirements there? That's a big challenge there. And what we put a lot in place there is indeed having the proper actions, that everybody runs the same actions, that they are documented, that they are provisioned in the same way, that it generates everything what is needed to be generated. Again, have one pipeline to rule them all. I like that term at this moment. But those are the challenges there. And when you are setting up such a pipeline, which are taking care of the right proof of security at the moment when you are executing it, so that your audit documentation is actually continuously up to date.
Exactly.
Those are items what you're starting to put in place, because it slows down the creation of business functionality when you need to free up time for your DevOps teams to start writing those audit documentations. And when you can do it continuously, automatic, it is so cool.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yeah, and it seems like I mean, honestly, when I read the Forrester report as well, I was surprised. I knew this was a thing that, GitHub was good at, but I was surprised how much ROI came out of it when it's such a, it's not the first thing you think of when you think of DevOps, right? It's not, oh, we're writing more code faster, but it's this really foundational back end process that has to get done. That sometimes isn't as flashy as some of the other things we talk about, but I'm really glad you guys called it out.
Yeah.
And I see now a link in the chat. That's from a blog post coming from GitHub itself about enterprise code migration for developer happiness in your mind. It is how LinkedIn actually moved to GitHub actually, and from an enterprise scale, also with thousands of developers, hundreds, thousands of pipelines and repos. It's a very, very nice story where it has been talked about developer happiness actually.
Yeah.
It's a very nice one.
Yeah, and especially when developers can pick up and move easily, you want to keep them happy.
Yeah.
Yes. All right, we're going to go into a few of sort of the unquantifiable benefits right now. These aren't ones where we could put $1 to it, but it's really these culture experiences that GitHub can help empower. You want to sort of walk us through them, Jonathan?
Yeah, and we've touched on a few of these already. Employee satisfaction in this environment, job market, it's important, and it's not something that you'd easily measure. But the cost of losing developers, onboarding people, it's expensive. So, corporations want to minimize churn in their workforce. So
definitely have a lot of discussion around this with our customers. Developer experience, developer happiness.
Yeah.
GitHub is an important part there. Definitely also on the open source part. It is very interesting when a organization supports their employees to contribute to open source.
Yes.
They are definitely very, very appreciated about that. They really like that. They are recognized by the communities. They are recognized within the organization. That's where I see employee satisfaction definitely go high. Yeah.
Yeah, and you mentioned that inner source was big in your organization, right?
Yeah. I want to touch that inner source part of better collaboration between teams. Inner source, we are pushing it and helping our customers also to move to inner source a lot, because it's such a powerful mechanism for knowledge sharing, working together, collaboration between teams. And definitely we have a global organization. It is so fantastic that team members can collaborate together all around the globe and find their peers in the technology sweet spot which is out there. Would be interesting when we can quantify this, but I see many happy teams actually around the globe when we are using inner source. Yeah.
Well, what was it? Oh, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I was just going to say, before we get to that third one, I do just want to, so on the top of everyone's screen, there's a book a demo button. And absolutely, if you want to follow up from your sales team or to book a demo, push that. I want to actually go back to something you said just beforehand about developers loving when they're allowed to contribute to open source within their work. If that's something that's an active discussion in your company, go ahead and press that book a demo button so the sales team can get in touch with you, and then ask them about setting up a meeting with our open source program office, which is the office inside of GitHub that helps organize and manage our open source participation. But they also love to have conversations with other companies who are thinking about bringing that into their org as well. So that's sort of a two-purpose button right there.
I by accident pushed the button. Sorry.
Then you're going to get a demo, probably of your own.
I want to talk about the OSPO about.
Well, and just following up on your comments, Clemens, there was collaboration that we found between other organizations. So the automotive, the consulting firm, and the supply chain actually opened up GitHub to their partners because their partners were writing code. And so it was important for them to make sure that the code was good, that it passed back and forth across platforms smoothly. So it's not only within collaboration within your company, but it's collaboration with other partners.
Yeah. And I still think this is quite underrated by management.
Yep.
We should push it more. I like what you mentioned, Shira, about the open source program office. Within Capgemini, we have a Capgemini GitHub program office. It's a little bit wider scope as only open source, but that's definitely where we are looking into in working together with universities in writing code and that kind of stuff. It's definitely a valuable item. We should bring more awareness around this.
Yeah. And we spend a lot of time, in addition to thinking about open source, thinking about that inner source, so that better collaboration between teams. All these teams are going to be like, why did you tell all these people to come talk to us? No, they're very excited to talk to you. If you also click that book a demo button and ask the sort of sales team that reaches out to you for a conversation with some of our enterprise advocates about inner source, these guys and women know so much about how to actually make inner source happen. Every time I talk to them, I'm just like in awe of all of these different and creative ideas that they have. So I would really encourage you to like reach out to us and let us know how we can help you, whether it's product, whether it's ideas, whether it's culture.
Yep.
So let's sort of speed through this last one so we can wrap it up and get everybody out of here on time.
Yeah. And again, customer satisfaction, I think, builds on everything we've talked about. If I'm getting code to you that's secure, that I don't have to worry about bugs, I have, good feedback, and transparency, this just, trails out to the customer, and, they're very happy with the products that are produced with GitHub.
Yeah, everybody loves when their stuff works.
Yeah,
right?
At the end of the day.
There's nothing else to say.
That's pretty much
and
it.
It works. Awesome. So just to wrap us up, we'll have just one or two summary slides, and then sort of say goodbye. I'm hoping everybody's had a great time with us over the last hour. So, Jonathan, you want to walk us through this slide?
Yeah, so it's very, very simple. The costs for licensing, so we included the costs for enterprise, cloud, and advanced security. And then the internal costs were training. So I had to train my DevOps, DevSecOps, how to use it. Some of the things, maybe, purchasing, consulting to help us move a new piece of functionality from GitHub in. So things like that, but the costs were fairly minimal.
All right.
And then that's the final slide, just showing over time that risk-adjusted financial summary. So you can see that, the costs, are flattening out while your return on investment just keeps growing.
Yeah. And once again, if you remember, if these numbers don't seem right to you, there is that ROI calculator that's going to give you a downloadable summary that's going to give you your own personalized chart and personalized metrics. Amazing. So I'm going to come back here. I'm going to stop sharing my screen on purpose this time. Oh, it looks like we have some sort of matrix thing going on. Do we have any sort of final comments and questions? I was really not paying attention at the chat, but I think Clemens was sort of in there helping answering some question and reading the comments. If not, we will go ahead and I'm going to say thank you so much, both Clemens and especially Jonathan, who has been an amazing business partner, both on this webinar. You guys saw how much fun we were all having, but also through this entire process. He has been just a joy to work with, and I can't thank him enough. As well as behind the scenes, I have my colleague from GitHub, Donia, who has been monitoring the chat, making sure you guys all get your links on time. As a reminder, there is that book a demo button on top, which is for demos, as well as OSPO conversations and inner source conversations and all kinds of conversations. And Jonya should be putting in a survey to the chat right about now. It's, I believe, just a few questions, and it can really help us understand how we can make this session more valuable to you. We're all about ROI here, right? What was this worth to you? So with that, I'm going to say thank you so much. And we're going to go ahead and end our webinar, but please go ahead and fill out that feedback form so we can get ever better.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you all.